This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so I've already installed. The installation part is very easy. Once we start with our real sessions, we are still in the demo session itself. Like today will be the last session for the demo, and after that, once we start our real session, at that point of time, we'll understand like how do we install the installation. How do we install like Playwright? What is the prerequisite? That part is very easy, very easy. I would say I'll just um, provide you like how it works in terms of in generally in terms of installation. For now, we'll see like how do we write a test case in terms of Playwright and TypeScript. Okay, I have also given some kind of example already after installation of the things. For now, first let's try to go and check how it is working in terms of test automation using Playwright and TypeScript. I'll explain the other two part as well that I have already written. But let's try to understand first how do we start writing the test case. So whenever we start writing the test case using Playwright and TypeScript or Playwright and JavaScript, the first step that used to be to import few of the things so that we can utilize some of the functions and methods available inside the module. So what we are trying to do over here is we have installed Playwright here, and inside the Playwright, if you see inside this one, inside the node modules, you'll see a lot of library have been installed. So this I did not install manually. How do we basically install is how do we basically install is I'll show you the steps as well. So in terms of installation, it is very easy. We just have to type a command known as npm init playwright. So these are the three words that we have to type uh, in your terminal. Whenever you open a Visual Studio Code, you can directly go to the terminal. I'll show you each and everything whenever we start the complete session for this. So you can directly go to terminal and then paste it over here as npm init test, or just type it npm init test. Npm is basically node packaging manager. We have a prerequisite that we need to have node.js installed in our system to work with Playwright. Okay, so if you just want to check like how do we install node.js, then you can go to any browser and search for like node.js download. You can go to node.js download, and then from here you can go to pre-built installer and then click on download node.js. It will automatically identify whether you're using Windows or MacBook, and based on that you can click on download node.js. It will open a software where it will ask you a few times to click on next button, and at the end it will ask you to click on finish button. Okay, it is just a setup button. A setup window used to be there, which used to set the node.js installation in the system. After you install node.js, npm will automatically be installed along with the node.js. So how do you have to verify whether the node.js have been installed or not? You can just type a simple command, which is node space hyphen b, node space hyphen version. Okay, and this will give you some kind of node.js version if it has been installed in your system successfully. Okay, and whatever you saw earlier, which was npm will also be automatically installed along with the node.js itself. So if you want to see like what is the version of node.js, then you can directly say it as npm space hyphen v, and it will give you the like if the node.js have been installed in your system, then for npm also it will provide you what is the version that you are currently have in your system, because we do not have to install npm separately. As soon as you install Node.js, the npm will also be installed. And after installation of Node.js, we basically have to type these three words, which is this a command which used to install Playwright in our system. Okay. Um in detail, we'll anyway see in our sessions. So let's move to our first, like, writing the test case. How do we categorize the test case? For that, I have one application which is so I have on this practice form application which I'll try to automate. Like, how do we basically try in general, every in terms of any tools and technology, if you have already worked on earlier. So you might be knowing, like, sometimes there will be sometimes in our application, or in terms of test automation, we'll also be having form filling some kind of data, like sometimes we'll have to click on radio button. Sometimes you have to fill some kind of data, you have to click on checkbox, and so on. So those kind of things we'll see in our today's demo session, where we'll try to fill this particular form and also validate. So what happened in terms of this is, I'll just show you what is happening over here. So you can basically fill the details over here. I'm just trying to fill a random details. uh, and then in terms of subject also, I'll just select a math. I'll just give a random value over here. Let's say I'll just give some value which is City, and from here I'll also select some states and some city from over here. Let's, for example, and as soon as you click submit button, you will see some kind of details is appearing over here. Whatever we have filled, it is basically displaying over here. So what we'll try to do in terms of our today's session is, we'll try to fill the form, click on submit, and validate whether thanks for submitting the form is appearing or not. This used to be a validation, right? But what is the main criteria, or what is the main purpose of testing? So the main purpose of testing is basically to validate whether the application is working or not, or the functionality is working or not. We have filled the form, but how do we validate whether this is working or not? We clicked on this as well. But if you just do not validate the value that is appearing over here, that means we are not trying to check completely whether the application is working or not. We have just checked that, we clicked on the submit button. That's it. Okay. The main purpose of the testing is also have to validate whether, let's say for example, thanks for submitting the form is appearing or not, or some kind of detail that we have basically filled is appearing over here or not. Okay, either you do the manual testing or you do in terms of the automation testing. The scope used to be same in both. Only the thing that used to be, like, whenever we do a manual testing, we basically navigate manually and click on or fill the details manually, whereas in terms of automation, we do whatever the things that we do manually, we convert that into the script, so that script will do the work for us, right? Okay. So let's start with um, our uh, first test script writing, and see how do we write a test script in terms of TypeScript using Playwright using TypeScript. If you have any questions, you can feel free to ask. In between also, you can stop me, and I'll try to check it from there. Okay. So whenever you start writing any kind of test case, or whenever you start creation of any file, the first step that used to be to import test module and expect module. So what is that is, I'll just show you. In any of the file, whatever the file that you create for writing a test case. Okay, so whatever you see here, example.spec.ts, uibasic.spec.ts is basically a file where we are trying to write the code. Okay. So here we are trying to write the code. That means we are basically trying to write the test cases using Playwright. Okay. Also, whenever you start writing the test case in terms of Playwright, you have to provide the Nomenclature of the file is file name dot spec dot ts. If you are working on TypeScript, if you're working on JavaScript, then it has to be dot .js. Okay, so this should be the nomenclature so that Playwright will be able to understand that these are the test files, not the normal TypeScript file. Okay, so first things in any of the file, whenever you create a new file to create a test case, the first thing will have to be to install test and expect function from Playwright test module. So what we are trying to do here is we are basically trying to get test function and expect function from Playwright test module. Why are we trying to declare? So if you hover over on this, you will see like it is also trying to fetch the complete path from where we are trying to install the import, test, and expect. Now we have just imported. Let's understand what is the importance of this test and expect function. So this test function is basically will help us in writing the test case. So in any of the let's say if you have worked on Selenium using Java or any other technologies, and along with either TestMG or JUnit, then in terms of writing the test case, we basically follow a standard where we name it as like at the rate test, and then we start writing some kind of value. So we first name it as at the rate test, and then basically we write some kind of methods which will be considered as a test, right? In the same way, Playwright has different kind of like notation where it will be considered as a test. So in terms of Playwright, we basically it is very simple, and it follows a standard where it says that whatever the function that we have installed, import over here, which is like test and expect, using this test function we'll be able to write the test cases. So how will we be able to write the test case? By just following a test, by just using a test function over here. Okay, I'll explain you in detail like what are the different things that we have in terms of our writing the test. And this expect that you see over here, which is like also known as expect function, is basically help us in writing the assertion. Assertion means validation. That means whether the step have been successfully passed or not, or even if you want to validate the complete test, whether the test have been completely passed or not. Okay, so those kind of validation we will be doing by using expect function, whereas test function is basically helping us in writing the test case. So how do we start writing the test case? By just using a test and a function. As I said, like test is a function, so whenever we have to call this function, we basically have to write along with the parenthesis. Okay, so then that is considered as a test method or a test function. So now if you hover on this, it says that it basically declares a test in Playwright. So wherever you use test function, it consider that we are trying to write a test case. Okay, it says it declares a test, and it mandatory takes two parameters. First one is title, which will be a unique title for each and every test case. And second is a body. A body will be basically a function where we have to write the complete step. So if you see the example that it has given, see everywhere, wherever it start writing the test, the first line will go to import test and expect module from Playwright test. Now, how do we write the test? So the basic example over here is like this, where we have used a test function to write the test case. It will take a title, which will be again a unique title for each and every test case. And then there is a function that it has written. Do not worry like how it has written the function over here. This is basically an arrow function in terms of TypeScript. We learn everything like how do we declare the arrow function, how to declare the another type of function in terms of JavaScript before starting the Playwright. So here it basically declare the function, and inside the function we'll be writing all the steps. Okay, inside the function, each and every test step will be basically going to write for whatever the requirement it used to be. So for this, let's say for this, whatever we are trying to write, we are basically trying to fill this particular form. So for to fill this form, there will be a different steps. That means to fill name, fill username, click on or select gender, and then fill the mobile number, date of birth, and so on. Okay, so these are the steps that we have to follow to write the test cases for filling this student registration form, right? So whatever the step that we have to write, that will go inside basically a function that will be declared. Okay, so let's try to start writing the test case. First test case will be writing over here. So we have just used a test function, and as it says, it will take a first parameter as title of the test case. So we'll just say it as let's say I'll just say it as student registration form. Okay, and then the second parameter that it will take is, all the parameters will be separated by a comma. Okay, and then second parameter that it will take is, it will take a function. The function will be in asynchronous nature. I'll explain you what is asynchronous in our going forward session. Probably for now, you will not understand, because we'll have to also go through with TypeScript before understanding like the functions in detail. Okay, and here we'll take here what did we do over here is, we have just written a function which is asynchronous in nature. Okay, so why did we give like async keyword over here, is because TypeScript and JavaScript is an asynchronous function. What is asynchronous function? Asynchronous function means it will basically not guarantee you that the code will be executed line by line. What is meant by that? Let's try to understand. So let's say in general, whenever you try to fill this particular form, right, what will happen is, we first have to launch the URL, right? In manual testing also, what we have to do is, we first have to launch the URL. In this case, this is the URL. Launch the URL. Second will be to fill the complete details, and then at the end we have to click on the submit button, right? So these are basically three steps. Let's say example, these are basically three steps that we have to perform in terms of Playwright using TypeScript. Now we know that the TypeScript is basically an asynchronous in nature. What is meant by asynchronous is, we basically follow that, we generally what do we follow is, like whenever we see like launch the URL, this has to execute for the first line. To fill the complete details, so this has to go before clicking on submit button, and at the last we have to click on submit button, right? So this is what in general have to be uh, the execution step. The first, it has to launch the URL, then fill the necessary details, and then click on submit button. Whereas TypeScript is asynchronous in its nature, and it will not guarantee you that this will be executed as the first step. All the three steps will try to execute at the same time. That is what known as asynchronous. It is not a synchronous manner. Okay, so that's where it is known as asynchronous. That means all the steps that we try to write will try to execute at the same time, is known as an asynchronous. And that's where we'll be using async and await concept on each. Basically we'll be writing the function with async, and will append await keywords on all the lines, all the test steps. What is meant by this await is, it will guarantee us that the first step will be executed for the first time, the second step will be executed as the second step, and I mean only after completion of the launching the URL, it will go and fill the form. Only after completion of the complete details filling, it will go and click on the submit button. Are you people able to follow the session?
Yes, Praveen.
Yes, Pravi.
Okay. So do not worry if you are unable to follow the session, because this is like our first. This still in the demo session. I just want to show you like how do we write the test case. So we are providing, but all the things async and await concept will again be discussed in our session whenever we start our session, the real session I mean to talk about. Okay, so for each and every line of the code, we basically append await keywords on every lines of code. So if I just show you the example that I've written for you people itself. So if you see this one, this we were trying to write a login page validation, where you can see like on each and every lines of code we have appended with that means prefixed with await keywords. So it will guarantee us that the first line of code will run as a first part, second line of code will run as a second part, and so on. Okay, so let's try to start writing the test case. First step used to be launch the URL. So first step is here to launch the URL and so on. And as we know that we have to prefix each and every step with await, it will guarantee us that the first whatever we are writing, the first step will be basically working as a will be launching as the or will be executing as the first step. Now we also have to understand what is page over here. So page is one of a fixture that Playwright has given. Page is one of a fixture that Playwright has given. What is fixture? Fixture is a special type of method that used to do some kind of setting up and tear down for us. What is meant by setting up is, so it will basically try to set up the browser. That means launch the browser, create the browser context, and also create a new page on the browser. What is meant by that is, so let's say I have just launched a Firefox over here. So what did I do is I clicked on the Firefox, and this has basically launched the browser, which is Firefox. Now internally it has done a lot of things. We have just clicked on this and it opened a Firefox browser. But internally it has gone through a lot of things. What are those things? Is first it basically launched the Firefox browser. It created a context on this. What is context? Basically it basically has opened a Firefox browser, is known as a one context. Okay, and on that context, basically these complete application that you see for Firefox is one of a context, Firefox context, and on that context it has created one new page. So wherever you see like we are able to type it over here, that is basically a context, that is basically a page. If you click on this again, either you can call it as a tab or you can call it as a new page. So if you again click on this, it will create another new page. And if we do not have pages available over here, that means we'll not be able to search any kind of things over here. If we have to search, that means we need to have a page on the browser where we can search it out. If you just want to search for like let's say Mars Airline or so and so kind of things, you will be able to search it out over here. If you only want to search like google.com, for that also we require a page to search over here. If browser is not opening a page, that means we'll not get this search bar to search for. And if we do not have any search bar, that means there is no use of using any kind of browser. Okay, so internally it will create a context, and also it will create a page over here so that we can search whatever we require in terms of searching for, right? So that's what in general this page will do. So this page will basically open a browser, create a context, and will create a new page. And on that new page, we'll be able to do some kind of operations. Now you might be wondering like, okay, I have not given any browser, so how it will understand which browser we have to basically use this? So at the time of installation of Playwright, the Playwright will create one config file. The Playwright will create basically this particular config file known as playwright.config.ts. And inside this, whatever you see, all the lines of code, I did not write anything. It have been automatically installed by the Playwright itself at the time of installing the Playwright. Okay, so here you can see it has also mentioned the browser name. Whatever the browser name that you want to use, you can mention it out inside the projects. Okay, so for now, just keep in mind that whatever the browser that we have to use, we have given inside the config.ts file. Okay, so whatever the browser that you give, it will try to launch those browser, and it will also try to work on those particular browser itself. Okay, so using this page, now we'll be able to access all the methods that we have in terms of Playwright. Okay, so first thing that we have to do is to launch the URL. To launch the URL, Playwright has given a method known as goto. So in general, whenever we do some kind of manual testing, we say that we'll be writing a step something like this: go to go to the URL, whatever the URL that you have to give, then fill the form, whatever the form that we have, and then we'll say it as click on the submit button. In the same way, it has given the nomenclature of the method in the same way. So you can see, like here it says go to will basically launch the URL. Whatever the URL that we use, it will basically launch the URL. This go to method will take a parameter which will be a string of which will be in a string format. So this go to method will take a parameter as URL, and that URL have to be in the form of string format. So that's where you will see like we have given it inside double quote. You can also write it inside a single quote. Either you can write it inside a single quotation or double quotation. Both will be the similar things. Okay, so what it will do is it will just launch the URL on the browser that we have given over here. So we have just given a Chromium browser for now. Uh, so we'll see that how it is working. So it will just launch the URL that we have given over here. Now our main goal is to now our basically main goal is to fill this particular form. So what will happen? Let's say if I have to just do manual testing for this particular filling the form. What will happen is we'll first launch the URL, and then we'll fill these particular application, this particular text box. So I know that by visually seeing that, okay, it is asking me for the first name, it is asking me for the last name. That means I am trying to identify what kind of value I have to enter in what field, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm basically trying to locate an element to fill the data. I'm trying to locate by visually, I'm trying to locate, okay, this is a name field, so I have to fill the first name and last name. This is an email field, so I have to just fill the email. I cannot fill email over here, or I cannot fill phone number over here, right? I just have to identify what kind of data I have to fill in what text field, right? In the same way, in terms of automation also, we have to locate the element, what kind of data we have to fill at what place. That means we basically have to locate an element. In terms of manual testing, we visualize this thing. That means we see on the page that what kind of data we have to, what it is asking us for us to fill it or select any values from here, right? But in terms of automation, our automation code will not know that what kind of things we have to do, right? So for that, we basically have to identify the element, and identifying the element is known as writing a locator. Okay, writing a locator is also known as an identifying the element on the page in terms of automation. Okay, because whatever the code that we are trying to write, we have to make them understand that we are trying to fill on the first name, we're trying to fill on the last name, and so on, right? Any question? Okay, people are leaving. That's fine. Okay, so uh, okay, so to identify the element, we basically have to write a locator. Playwright support different types of locator. We'll explain in detail in going forward sessions. So how do we write a locator? Let's say um, Playwright basically supports CSS selector, XPath, and Playwright has also given few different methods. By using the methods, also we'll be able to write the locators. Okay, so we basically have id over here, right? So you see id is available over here. So in terms of css selector, what it says is, if we have id available as a locator, then in terms of css selector we can directly write hash and then id value. Okay, I'll explain you all these things in detail once again whenever we start learning playwright, be- um, like after going through the typescript courses. So do not worry that how I'm trying to write the locator over here. So in terms of playwright, in terms of writing the CSS selector as a locator, one way of writing a CSS selector is basically to identify an element using the style property of an element. Whatever you see over here, like placeholder, type, ID, class, all those are basically a attribute for an element. For which element? For this particular first name element. Okay, so you can so if you have id, it says that um, so if you try to see it over here, if you have id, uh, so see, in terms of css selector, it says that if id is present, we can use the below css selector syntax, which is hash and then id value, or tag name hash id value. We'll go through examples of understanding the complete details in the later part of the session. Just try to understand, if we have id, then we can directly use hash and then id value. So id value is first name over here. We'll directly write it something like this. So how do we write the locators? How do we write basically the locators in terms of playwright is, we have a method known as locator. So all the methods will be like self understandable in terms of playwright. So whenever we have to write a locator, it says that by using a locator method, we will be able to write the locators. And this locator will select a selector, that means whatever the element that we are trying to identify. And that will be in the form of string again. Okay. And uh, what we are trying to do over here is, we are trying to fill the form. We are basically trying to fill the first name. That's where we have written a locator to fill the first name. So to fill the first name, that means we have to enter some of the value. Let's say example test. We have to enter some kind of value. So to enter the value or fill the value in any of the text box, Playwright has given a method known as fill. It is again a simple. If you just hear a word fill method, you'll be easily able to understand, okay, that means we'll have to fill some kind of value. So let's say I'll just say it as test. So if you hover over on this, it says that it set a value to the input field. That means it will just enter the value to the input field wherever we are trying to fill the element. So that means we are trying to fill on the first name over here. So it will identify the first name, and on that name, it will, on that field, it will basically fill the test that we have given over here. Okay. Now we have to write the locators for the others as well. So let's try to write as the concept will be again same. By using the locator method, we'll have to write the selected, that means a locator locate an element on the page, and whatever the action that we have to do. Let's say if you want to fill or send some kind of keys or enter the value, then you have to basically use a fill method. If you want to click, then you have to use a click method that Playwright has given. Okay, so let's try to fill quickly the other values as well, which we have in terms of last name. We also have a last name. So we have a ID which is seeing as last name, so we can directly use hash and then ID, which is also able to identify. How do I know it is identifying? So you can see like uh, now it is not highlighting any value on the application, but if you click on over here, you can see like it is able to highlight the value, right? So that means it is able to identify that particular element. Yes, please. If you have any kind of question, you feel free to ask. Okay. So I'm just sending some kind of like entering some kind of random value over here. Um, in terms of last name, I've given just testing. So we'll also have to fill the email value. So for the email as well, can you please mute yourself? Okay. Now the other thing that we have to use is the email. Email. We also have to fill the email. So for that, we also have ID value over here. We'll see with the other value as well. But for now, let's try to complete. The concept is same. We just have to write a locator. However, it can be either we have a ID or we have some other value. Using any of the value, we'll be able to write the locators. It is not only that we have to use ID value only. As we have ID, so it is very easy in terms of writing the locators. That's where I'm trying to write it quickly. Okay, so I'll just say it as test@testing.com, and then the next things that we have to do is to select either male, female, or others. So we can select any of the value that it has given over here. So if you try to see over here, it is label saying that male. The second label it is saying for female, and the third is for others. So if you go inside this, there is a label. There is basically a field as well, which is like gender, and inside that we'll see there is a ID also available. But whatever you want to see, you can select it up. So let's select it as a female over here. So we have ID as a gender radio -2, and we can identify it easily. So what happens over here is either you can click on the text box or you can click on the radio button that it has given. It will be able to select the value. So what we are trying to select is a female in this part. So we'll just write for each and everything. So whatever you have to work with any of the element, we basically have to identify those particular elements. Without identifying the element, without locating the element, we'll not be able to do anything. Okay, so what we are trying to do, this is a radio box, radio button, and to radio button we basically have to check and uncheck, or click or unclick, right? In terms of radio button and checkbox, we basically have to either check, uncheck, or anything. Let's say if you want to uncheck this, you can click again. If you want to uncheck this, you can click again. If you want to check, you have to click again. So to handle a radio button and checkbox, we basically have a method known as check. Okay, we can also use click. There is no harm in that, but Playwright has given a method to work with a radio button and checkbox, to click on a radio button or a checkbox by using a check method. So if you see over here, it says that it ensures that checkbox or radio element is checked. Okay, so if you have to work with radio button or checkbox, you can directly use a check button over here, a check method that Playwright has given. Now we have next value as a mobile number. So we have ID as well, which is given over here as a username. ID as a username. Okay, so let's try to identify this. Okay, it is able to highlight that this mobile number field is able to identify. Okay, so we can again use, because it has already selected the value, which is this one, and I'm just trying to fill some kind of random value. So what did we do? Again, we have written a locator for mobile number and filling the mobile number from here by providing some kind of random value. Okay. This date of birth, let it be like that itself for now, whatever the date it is selecting. Now we'll try to fill this particular subject. Now let's try to understand what happened over here. So as soon as we fill some kind of value, it will display a random value based on our matching elements that we are trying to search. Okay, and if you hover over on this, we will be able to select the value. So what first we have to do is we basically have to fill the value over here. Okay, so let's say I'll just fill a value which is m, and based on that some of the value will be displayed over here, and will based on the value that it is displaying, our goal is to just select computer science. Okay, so for that also we'll be trying to identify the element which is computer science. Let's try to see where it is able to identify this. So this is for chemistry, this is for computer science, and we have the ID which is saying as this one. But for before that, we basically have to identify this subject field as well, where we can fill the text value, whatever we are trying to search it out. So we have a class name over here. We basically have a class name which is able to identify the element. So we have multiple class name given over here, which is basically separated by a comma, separated by basically a space, a single space. So these are basically a different class name that it has given. It is having a multiple class name. So let's try to select a value which is this one. And if we have a class name, at that point of time we can use dot class name. Okay, so if you have a class name available for any of the element, that is class name means class attribute available, then we can use dot and then class name. Either you can use single class name or you can use multiple class name as well. So here we are trying to identify an element by using class. Earlier we have used ID, now we are trying to use a class over here. So we'll just say it as base dot locator, and then we'll see as a fill which is m. I'll just mention it as m, and from here we'll try to select the value which we are trying to select as computer science. So as soon as we fill the form m, uh, as soon as we fill the text value over here as m, we'll see that some of the value will be displayed, and our goal is to select, let's say, computer science. So at that point of time we can directly say it as we have an ID available which is identifying computer science. Let me scroll up a bit, and if you see, it is highlighting computer science, so we can directly use computer science. But as we know that whenever we fill the form, whenever we basically fill some kind of value and we are waiting for the element to be displayed, it will take a few milliseconds of time, right? So we also have to handle that, wait for an element to be appear on the page, and then we can handle that. For now, we'll not give any kind of waiting concept over here, and then see whether it is able to select the value. So what we are trying to do is we are basically trying to select this particular value. To select the value over here, we have to click on this element. So m, and then let's say if you click on uh, scroll up, if you click on computer science, the computer science will be selected over here. Okay, so our goal is to select the computer science. So to select the value, we basically have to click on the element. Okay, and now next things is basically to check the hobbies field over here. Okay, so if you just click on this one, any of the hobbies, so we have an attribute known as for, or we also have an ID which is identifying the same value. If you go inside this, then we have an ID for second checkbox, and inside this we have an ID for third checkbox. So let's try to select the second checkbox, which is reading. So we have an ID available, so we can directly simply use hash and then ID. We can provide it over here, which is ID to select the next value, and we know that this is a checkbox, so we can also use check method to check on the element. Okay, then we have also a current address field, but I'll just try to enter some kind of value. So we also have to identify this one, and in that way we have ID available over here. So if you have ID available, it is very easy to write the locators. So you can directly use hash and ID without going for any other attribute. Hash ID value, and then what we have to do, we basically have to fill some kind of value, which I'll just give as, let's say, Hyderabad. So this Hyderabad field will be located over, will be entered over here. Now we also have to select city and state. So it is a drop down which is static in nature. These value are drop down value which is static. Why did I say static? Is it has very limited number of values available over here. Okay, so what we have to first do is, here we have to click on the drop down and then we have to select the value. So first we basically have to identify the drop down element, and for drop down element, the class, it has given a class name over here, which is this one. So this is a class name available to identify this particular drop down, and we know that if you have a class name, we can use dot and then class name. Okay, so we have two elements, which is, there are basically three elements which is identifying the same class name. Let me refresh it once. I'll just take more 10 minutes of time if you people have, and we'll quickly finish it off. So this is the value that we have given, which is, it is able to identify three elements. Now let's select it as, we have a class which is selecting the state over here as well. So we can directly use space diff. Okay, there are lot many element matching. So we basically have to find out the unique element that it is matching the locator. So here we have, here we have a text value which is select state. So we can also write, let's try to write a method which has been given by the Playwright, known as get by text. Okay, so Playwright has also given few of the methods to write the locators. Okay, so wherever you see like the text value is available, we can use a Playwright method known as get by text to write an element. If you hover on this, it says that allow locating element that contains given text. So we know that there is an element which contains this select text. So I have written just get by text is one of a method that Playwright has given to write a locator. And what we have to do is, we have to basically click on this particular element. As soon as we click on this, some of the value will be displayed, and from here we'll just select, let's say, NCR for now. So to select the NCR, we have a ID value which is this one, which is identifying the first value, which is NCR. So I'll just again write it as, what we have to do to select the value, we basically have to click on the value that you want to select. So we'll just make it as locator, which is this one, and then click on the element. Here also it is again similar, where we have a select city as a text value. So we can directly use get by text value that Playwright has given, which is space dot get by text. And we know that there is a text value available at select city, and on that we have to basically click on the drop down, and from that drop down we have to get some kind of city. So from here we can, let's say we'll try to get the Delhi as a city. So we have again one ID available which is identifying one particular element which is city over here. So we can write the locator, and then to select the value again we have to click on this. So we have filled everything in terms of the form that we have over here, and now we have to click on submit button. So also we have to identify this button as we have a ID as submit. So we can write the locator in this way, which is ID hash. If you have ID, then you can directly write by using a hash and then ID value. And what we have to do is we have to basically click on the element which is submit. So we have to use a method known as click. Okay, and as soon as we click on submit button, some values, it has to select something, select value as, let's say, maths, sports, and then as soon as you click on this submit button, this will open a pop-up where it says that thanks for submitting the value, and for that also we have a ID available. So what we'll do is we'll just try to identify this, and see, now till now we were just trying to do some kind of operation, some kind of actions on the element. Now we are trying to validate whether this particular form has appeared or not. Okay, so we are saying that thanks for submitting the form is displaying on the form or not. Okay, for that we have to use expect function. What we are trying to do, we are basically trying to validate whether thanks for submitting the form is displaying or not. For that we basically have to use expect function, and this expect function will take a actual value. That means what we are trying to compare, what we are trying to validate. So this actual value can be different values as well. This can be a selected, that means locator for an element. This can be some kind of values as well, whatever we have to check. Let's say if you want to check expect, let's say true, expect true is basically a true or not. So we basically have to give like to be truthy. Example I'm talking about. Do not worry like what I'm trying to talk over here. So we're saying that expect is having a value which is true. Whether that is true or not, we can basically compare by using a method that Playwright has given, is known as to be truthy. To be truthy ensures that the value is true in terms of Boolean context. That means it is saying whatever the value that we are trying to compare, if that is true, then only it will basically pass the test case, or else it will basically fail the test case. So what we are trying to basically do over here is we are trying to check if there is an element available on the page. Okay, if there is an element available on the page which consists of this particular value. After clicking on submit button, we are trying to say that validate uh, whether an element available having this particular text or not. So we are saying expect this particular element to have text. What kind of text is this text? For okay, form. So in terms of assertion as well, in terms of Playwright, it is very easy that we are saying expect this particular element. That means we have written a locator to identify an element, this particular element to have some kind of text or not. You can also use to contain text or not. Okay, so we are just simply validating that this particular element contains this particular text or not. This is one particular assertion. There are lot of assertions available in terms of Playwright. Okay, now we have completely filled the form, and we are also trying to validate that whether the form is whether the successful message is appearing or not. Okay, let's try to run now the test case. So in terms of running the test case, if you have only one particular test case, or if you want to run entire test case, whatever you have available in your project, then you can use npx playwright test. Okay, this command npx playwright test will run all the test case that you have inside your framework or inside your project. If you want to run only one specific file, let's say our goal is to run only uibasics.spec.ts. So here what we'll do is we have to write npx playwright test and then provide the path name of the file whichever you want to run. So what is the path name over here is it is available inside a test folder. So we have to write tests slash the file name, whatever the file name that we have given, which is ui basics.spec.ts. Okay, and we just have to click enter. One more thing that we have to understand is playwright will run by default in a headless mode. That means you will not see that a browser will be opened. So for that we have to mention it hyphen headed. Whenever we mention hyphen headed, we'll see that it will open a browser, whichever browser we are trying to execute the code. So now you can see it has opened a browser. The execution will be too fast over here, so we may not be even able to observe that whether it is filling the form or not. So let's try to see. It is trying to load the application and now it has failed at subject. Okay, so now we know that it basically filled some values, which is it basically failed at some point of time. Where it has failed is it failed at a radio button which is selecting as a female. So why it has failed? Because here if we talk about in terms of ts, we have filled something which is username. This is a username for filling the where is the so this is a username for mobile. Let's try to identify what it is identifying. So this is basically trying to fill some kind of value over here. It was not able to identify, and select thing is this subject is saying that we do not have to fill by direct. So see, I wantedly failed the test case. If you see in terms of subject, here this form is developed in such a way that this will basically use most of the method that Playwright has given. So if you see over here, this says that we have to type a single step, a single character at a time. So it says that if you directly copy paste the value that you have, it may not be able to identify sometimes. So let's say I'll just copy. So this text value is saying that we basically have to enter character by character. If you want to enter math, we have to basically enter character by character. If you sometimes enter by using directly a copy paste value, what fill does is what fill method will do is whatever the value that we have given, it will just copy paste on the text element whatever wherever we are trying to do or trying to enter the value. Okay, so to enter a character by character value, we have a method known as press sequential. Press sequentially is a method available in terms of Playwright, which basically enter the value character by character. So let's try to use over here in terms of mobile number as well. And now try to run the test case and see what is happening. So we'll run again the same test case that we are trying to check and see what is happening over here. It's like my system is very slow, so it is taking a lot of time to load. And if it takes more than 30 seconds, the test case will get failed. As we have discussed earlier, that Playwright has a default waiting time of 30 seconds. So if within 30 seconds, if it is not able to launch the application, that means it will fail. It will not be able to identify the element. I believe like it will fail because it has waited for more than 30 seconds. This might not happen for your laptop or the system that you are trying to use. Looks like my system is very slow today, where it is taking a time to load the application or taking a time to search anything inside the application. Okay, so now it has loaded the application, and we see that it is not able to identify the looks like there is some issue with the application itself, where it is keep on navigating. Let me try to run once again and see whether it is happening or not. Looks like there is an issue in the application where it is flickering, uh, having a flickering issues. After we enter some values, and then see it started flickering now. Okay, so so this is basically how do we write the test case. I'll check whether it is having an issue with the application or it is having an issue with my system, why it is not going forward. But in general, if you talk about, we write the test case in the same way however we have written. Okay, if I just give you an example to run the test case, I've written one another test case over here. Let's try to see whether it is working or not. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to launch the URL, launch the application, and fill the username and password over here. So I've just filled, clicked on, and it have been successfully passed. You can see like it have been passed. One test case have been passed. It is saying we are also trying to validate the same thing. So similar things that we have written inside the UI basic, which is currently not running. Not sure what is the issue. Where I see like the application start flickering after some time. Whereas if you see over here as well, we have used similar kind of method, which is like locator, fill, click, and we are trying to validate by using an assertion using expect function. So this is how we write the test case in general in terms of Playwright. Okay. So with this, I'll stop our session over here. And if you have any kind of questions, feel free to ask. Any questions
I,
from anyone? Yes.
yeah, Praveen. So do we this supports a keyword-driven framework, right? Like, so if you want to start with
So right.
QAT environment or dev or production, so do we have that options?
So keyword driven framework is entirely different. So what is exactly your question? Can you please repeat?
See, yeah, we have like 100 test cases now. I want to run on different environments, like it is
Right, right.
one
Okay.
in UAT. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So,
So that is again depending on the logic that we have to write. That everything will be supported. So let's say if you have 500 test case, 100 of the test case that you want to run as a part of smoke test on some of the environment, regression part you might be running on the QA environment. So all these things, all the logics will work in Playwright as well. So everything will be categorized. We in general we only have to write. So this is something, right? We have written a form. Let's say if you want to include it as a regression part, so you can just mention it as over here something at the rate regression inside the curly braces, and this will become as a part of your regression test case. Okay, so based on the tag, we will be able to run our test case on the different environment as well.
okay. And one more question, like when we put this one in the cloud setup, and if you want to run this entire test, and after the test results, if you want it in a mail, is it possible to get the test results in an email?
Everything is possible. So see, whenever you integrate it with email, that will not be specific to any of the tools. It will be specific to a technology that we are trying to use. So using JavaScript, we'll be able to send the email as well.
Okay.
JavaScript or TypeScript.
Okay. And more final question, like, what is the plan, like, when we are going to start the actual sessions?
This will basically be very soon, like either tomorrow or day after. But again, this will be communicated to the person you are in contact with.
Okay. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Any other question from anyone?
Hi Praveen, this is Ravi. How much of
Yes.
TypeScript experience is required, to continue the course?
Zero. So you do not need any kind of previous knowledge in terms of TypeScript. Everything will be covered in terms of the courses as well.
Thanks, Praveen.
Okay. Any question from anyone else? Anyone?
No, Praveen, I'm good.
Okay, great. Peter, are you also available over here? Okay, fine. So that's it for our session today. Then, if you do not have any question, then we'll stop it over here and we'll continue in our next session with some other topic. Thanks a lot once again.